Right now, your brain is actually doing everything in its power to avoid thinking.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it is biologically wired to just be as lazy as
All
possible,
right, to conserve energy. And for the last couple of years, we've basically been handing it the ultimate excuse to just shut off completely.
which is artificial intelligence.
Exactly. I mean, we've all done it. You get a dense, like 30-page report or this massive article you just do not have time to read.
Yeah, you just drop it into a text box, ask for 3 bullet points, and move on with your day.
Right. And it feels like a massive leap in productivity. But, when the machine is doing all the summarizing and the synthesizing, we really have to stop and ask what is actually left for the human brain to learn.
And that really is the defining tension of this whole era. We're treating the offloading of information processing as like a mere software upgrade for our daily workflows.
Just a new tool.
Right. But if we look at the underlying mechanics of how humans actually acquire knowledge, handing over that heavy lifting fundamentally alters our cognitive architecture.
Which brings us to today's source material. We are looking at a deeply compelling TEDx talk today by Kristina Kallas.
She's the Minister of Education in Estonia.
Yeah. And the core mission of our deep dive today is to evaluate her argument that the rise of AI is not just a technological shift.
No, she argues it's a biological and evolutionary pressure on the human species itself.
Okay, well, let's unpack this a bit, because to understand how she arrived at that conclusion, we really have to look at the timeline.
The timeline is fascinating.
It is, because it reveals this massive vulnerability we already had way before ChatGPT even existed.
The sequencing is so vital here. So OpenAI launched ChatGPT in November 2022.
Right.
And Kallas took office as Minister of Education just 5 months later, so April 2023.
Which was right in the middle of the hype cycle.
Exactly. At that point, the integration of generative AI in schools was completely unmanaged. I mean, her advisors were coming to her totally panicking, warning that students were heavily relying on these tools.
And there was no playbook, right?
None. Zero regulatory playbook. The standard bureaucratic response would be to treat this as, just an IT problem.
Like filtering IP addresses on the school Wi-Fi or something.
Yeah, or trying to mandate some sort of detection software.
Right.
But Estonia bypassed the IT department entirely.
They realized it wasn't about servers.
Right. They actually brought in neuroscientists and cognitive scientists. The conversation shifted from managing a software deployment to investigating what this technology actually does to the biological capacity of a student to learn.
And the data they reviewed paints a pretty grim picture of where humanity stood, even before generative AI went mainstream, didn't it?
It really did. They look back at this comprehensive 2017 survey conducted by the OECD.
The Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, right?
Yeah, exactly. This survey evaluated baseline labor skills across the global workforce. And in 2017, remember, the capabilities of artificial intelligence were largely just back-end algorithms.
Right. Nobody was using a chatbot to write a term paper back then.
Exactly. Yet the data revealed that 2/3 of the adult workforce already possessed lower literacy, lower numeracy, and lower digital problem-solving skills than the standard computers of that era.
Wait, I mean, think about what that actually means. 5 years before we had large language models writing coherent essays, the average human was already losing a foot race to, like, an Excel spreadsheet.
Pretty much, yeah, in basic calculation and textual analysis.
That is wild. 2/3 of the population was functionally lagging behind machines nearly a decade ago.
It's a huge pre-existing vulnerability.
It really is. It feels a lot like what happened when we all got GPS on our smartphones.
Oh, that's a great comparison.
Like, before GPS, you had a mental map of your city. You had actual spatial awareness. Now, without the blue dot on the screen, most of us are completely lost in our own neighborhoods.
We were already cognitively offloading our navigation, our math, our memory, well before AI came along.
So if we connect this to the bigger picture, Kallas and her scientific advisors realized they were not facing a novel tech glitch.
Right, they were staring down a historical recurrence.
Yeah.
They actually drew a direct parallel to the invention of the printing press.
The printing press. Okay, I love this analogy.
Yeah, because before Gutenberg, reading was this highly specialized niche ability reserved for just a microscopic fraction of the elite.
Most people couldn't read at all.
Exactly. So the sudden mass availability of printed text didn't just, democratize information. It enforced a mandatory biological rewiring of the human species.
Right. It created a society where you simply could not survive or participate without knowing how to read. It applied a mental, cognitive, evolutionary pressure.
You didn't evolve an extra thumb, But every single human brain across the globe eventually had to forge entirely new neural pathways to process written language.
And so Estonia's thesis is that AI is our modern printing press.
Yes, we are in the middle of a forced evolutionary leap where the baseline human brain has to change to survive.
But what exactly does that mean? Like, what is the demand now?
The demand is that humans must think systematically, faster, and with a significantly higher degree of complex creativity than our current baseline really allows.
But stepping up to that evolutionary demand requires fighting against millions of years of our own biology, right?
Absolutely. It's an uphill battle.
Yeah.
Kallas breaks down the neurobiology into two distinct operational states to explain this.
Right, the lower cognitive mode and the higher cognitive mode. I really want to dig into the actual mechanics of these modes because understanding the how here explains why this transition is so incredibly difficult for us.
Yeah, it's all physical at the end of the day.
So the lower cognitive mode is described as the domain of memory, basic understanding, and automated skills. It's the autopilot.
Exactly. Once you learn to ride a bicycle, you never have to consciously calculate your balance again. The brain just executes the program.
But what is the actual mechanism behind that autopilot?
Well, it's very physical. When you learn a routine task, your brain fires electrical signals along specific neural pathways. As you repeat the task, like riding a bike or, memorizing that World War II started in 1939, your brain coats those specific neural pathways in a fatty substance called myelin.
Myelin, right.
Yeah, and myelination acts exactly like rubber insulation on a copper wire. It stops the electrical signal from leaking out, allowing the impulse to travel incredibly fast and with almost zero energy loss.
So your brain literally insulates its most used pathways just to save calories.
That's exactly it.
She gives the example of stereotypes operating the exact same way, right?
Yeah, that was a fascinating point. If you pick up a cultural belief that Italians are loud, your brain myelinates that association.
So when you meet an Italian person, the electrical signal shoots down that insulated path instantly.
Right, you assume they are loud so you don't have to spend the mental energy observing and analyzing a brand new complex human being. It's literally a biological shortcut.
Okay, but let me push back on this calorie-saving idea for a second.
Sure.
Because humans are innately curious creatures. Look at a toddler. They ask why, like 400 times a day.
Oh, constantly.
Right. They will completely exhaust themselves trying to figure out how a simple door hinge works. If biology dictates that we just want to stay on an insulated autopilot, where does that massive innate drive for exhausting discovery fit in?
Well, that is a critical distinction to developmental neuroscience. You see, a toddler is in a state of hyperneuroplasticity,
Meaning what? Exactly.
meaning they have very little myelin because they have very few established routines. Their biological imperative at that age is to build the initial map of the world,
Okay.
which is why children sleep so much and consume so many calories relative to their body weight. They're burning immense energy forging those raw pathways.
But as we get older, that changes.
Drastically. As we transition into adulthood, the biological imperative shifts from building the map to surviving efficiently using the map we've already built.
Oh, wow. So the brain begins pruning unused connections.
Yeah, and heavily insulating the ones we use daily. It becomes the body's ultimate energy miser.
Because the brain is the biggest energy consumer in the human body.
By a wide margin, yeah. Operating in the higher cognitive mode, which involves analyzing novel situations or evaluating conflicting ethics or creating unprecedented solutions, all of that forces the brain off those comfortable insulated pathways.
So it has to fire signals across unmyelinated gaps.
Exactly. It forces the creation of new synapses. And that biological process demands a staggering caloric draw from the body.
Kallas noted that if you spend 24 hours studying for a highly complex exam, functioning entirely in that higher order thinking space, you will wake up the next day feeling physically devastated.
Yes, the physical toll is actually heavier than running a physical marathon. The cognitive task drains the organism completely.
That is insane, but it makes sense. I mean, think about your drive to work this morning. Chances are you don't remember the commute at all.
Right, you were on a heavily insulated lower mode pathway.
But now imagine driving in a foreign country on the opposite side of the road in a manual transmission car, reading road signs in a language you barely know.
Oh, your heart rate elevates, you start sweating.
Right, you feel physically drained after just 20 minutes. That is the physical reality of the higher cognitive mode.
And because our brains are biologically desperate to avoid that physical exhaustion, we have basically spent the last 2 centuries designing our global institutions to accommodate our laziness.
But here's where it gets really interesting. Kallas points out that traditional education systems perfectly mirror the energy-saving lower cognitive mode.
Oh, the architecture of a standard classroom is entirely built on it.
Step 1, the teacher gives you a fact to remember. Step 2, you demonstrate a basic understanding of it. Step 3, you apply it to a standardized test.
Memorize the date in 1939, understand it represents a war, fill in the bubble.
We rarely demand that a standard high school student sit there and systematically analyze the geopolitical failures that led to the conflict or, ethically evaluate the motives of the actors involved.
Because that level of analysis, the true higher-order cognitive flow, has historically been walled off.
Walled off.
Yeah, education systems have traditionally saved that level of biological exhaustion for a very small percentage of the population.
Well, I see.
You generally only encounter that expectation of constant higher-order evaluation when you reach postgraduate studies, like a PhD program or deep academic research. We train the masses for the lower mode and reserve the higher mode for the elite.
Which brings us to the collision point with modern technology. Artificial intelligence is the ultimate master of the lower cognitive mode.
It really is. It remembers the entire internet.
Right. It understands context flawlessly, and it applies that knowledge instantly. Every single task we have structured our standardized education around for 200 years can now be executed by an LLM in 3 seconds.
And without burning a single human calorie.
Exactly. Which forces the existential question Kallas had to confront. If our schools continue to operate on inertia, catering exclusively to the energy-saving lower cognitive mode, and AI can now perform all of that work perfectly, the human brain loses its primary stimulus for development.
Yeah, and she describes the outcome as brain rot.
Which sounds colloquial, but is actually biologically accurate in this context.
The clinical term she uses is cognitive offloading. If we hand over the processes of remembering, understanding, and applying to the machine, our neural pathways literally have no reason to fire.
Oh, so they just atrophy.
They atrophy.
Yeah.
It is the equivalent of putting a perfectly healthy muscle into a plaster cast for a decade. The muscle doesn't stay the same. It degrades.
But it is vital to recognize the boundaries of what the machine can actually do, right?
Oh, definitely. AI is exceptionally capable of mimicking creation by stringing together statistical probabilities based on past data.
But it struggles profoundly with true ethical evaluation.
Yeah, because it has no biological stakes, it has no empathy, no lived experience, which means it cannot create genuinely new, unprecedented moral frameworks.
So deep ethical evaluation and true conceptual creation remain uniquely human capacities.
Exactly. And to protect those uniquely human capacities, Kallas argues we can no longer wait until someone is 25 years old and in a PhD program to demand higher-order thinking.
Right. We have to push this evolutionary pressure down to 12 and 13-year-olds. 7th graders need to be forced into the marathon of analyzing and creating.
Yeah, and I think this raises an important question. The logistical challenge there is immense.
Oh, I can imagine.
We just established that the adult brain fights higher-order thinking because of the caloric cost.
Right.
A 12-year-old brain dealing with puberty and social development is even more resistant to expending that kind of focused, sustained analytical energy. How do you construct an environment where a 7th grader is willing to abandon the autopilot shortcut and stay in a state of high cognitive friction?
And that is exactly the problem Estonia is currently trying to solve with their AI LEAP program.
It's a fascinating initiative.
Their solution is genuinely radical because they didn't ban the technology to force students back to the old ways.
No, they went the other way.
Yeah.
They mandated the use of AI.
They launched a pilot program in February 2025, starting with upper secondary schools, so 10th and 11th graders.
Right.
With a scheduled expansion to vocational education students by September 2026.
And the structural execution of the AI LEAP program is notable too. It operates as a public-private partnership, equally funded by the ministry and private tech firms.
But they explicitly outsource the operational management to an independent foundation.
Yeah, acknowledging that government ministries basically lack the agility required to iterate on experimental tech initiatives in real time.
But the crucial distinction of this entire program lies in the software architecture itself. Estonia is not just issuing student licenses for a general off-the-shelf chatbot.
No, they partnered directly with OpenAI to build a highly customized research and development tool.
They integrate it via API to construct a specifically engineered Socratic-style tutoring AI.
Right. So what does this all mean in practice?
The Socratic parameter fundamentally alters the utility of the LLM. In a standard setup, the AI's prime directive is to fulfill the user's prompt as efficiently as possible.
It's a compliance engine.
Exactly. But the Socratic tool in Estonia is programmed with a hard constraint. It is forbidden from providing the final answer.
Let's walk through what that actually looks like for a student. Say a 15-year-old sits down to write an essay on the economic collapse of the 1930s.
Okay.
Their brain, seeking the lower cognitive shortcut, prompts the AI. Give me an outline of the causes of the Great Depression.
And the standard AI just spits out 5 bullet points.
Right. The student's brain gets to stay heavily myelinated and insulated. Energy conserved.
But Estonia's Socratic AI intercepts that prompt and replies with a question instead.
Exactly. It says something like, before we outline the causes, what do you think happens to a country's manufacturing sector when the stock market loses half its value overnight?
So the student is immediately denied the cognitive offload. The machine acts as this artificial counterweight to our biological laziness.
Yeah. And if the student gives a half-hearted answer, the AI analyzes it and probes deeper. It might say, you mentioned factories close. If factories close, unemployment spikes. How does that spike in unemployment affect the agricultural sector?
Wow.
The AI becomes a tireless, persistent sparring partner that forces the student to systematically connect the nodes of information.
So the student gets frustrated because they are literally burning calories. They are forging unmyelinated pathways in real time.
Exactly. The AI is forcing them to stay in the higher cognitive mode.
And that completely shifts the role of the teacher in the classroom too, doesn't it?
It does. The program heavily emphasizes teacher training because the metric for success is no longer whether a student can memorize the facts of the Great Depression.
Right. The metric is whether the student can sustain a high-level, analytical, hour-long dialogue with a machine that is constantly challenging their logic.
And Kallas is remarkably transparent that this entire endeavor is an ongoing scientific observation.
Estonia is basically the first country to deploy a custom Socratic tool at a systemic level.
Right. They're conducting rigorous scientific monitoring alongside the deployment because there's practically no longitudinal data on how a persistent AI interrogator impacts adolescent neurodevelopment.
They are building the airplane while it is in the air.
They have to. Waiting for a decade of clinical trials just wasn't an option. The threat of entire generations succumbing to cognitive offloading, of letting our collective analytical skills atrophy in the face of hyper-efficient algorithms, was a much greater risk than trying something radical.
They realized that coasting on 200 years of educational inertia was just a guaranteed failure.
It echoes a sentiment Kallas shared from the Estonian president during the launch of the initiative.
Oh, what did he say?
Well, the objective is not to measure who logs the most hours of the chatbot or which country has the highest screen time. The objective relies entirely on the how and the why of the interaction.
We are using the machine to make the human stronger. It takes this looming, nebulous threat of artificial intelligence and repurposes it as the exact mechanism required for human cognitive evolution.
We are manufacturing the friction our brains need to grow.
The technology has arrived and the cognitive pressure is locked in. The printing press has been invented. We cannot uninvent it.
No, the only variable remaining is the manner in which we choose to respond to that pressure.
Which brings us entirely back to you listening to this deep dive. We started by acknowledging how natural it is to just drop a complex document into an AI and ask for the summary.
Yeah, it's the easy route.
But after looking at Estonia's massive systemic experiment, you have to audit your own daily workflows.
Look at the last 10 interactions you had with an AI tool. Did you treat it as a vending machine for quick answers?
If so, you are actively participating in your own cognitive offloading. You are indulging the lower cognitive mode, allowing your analytical pathways to degrade while the server farm does the heavy lifting.
Or are you prompting it to be your Socratic sparring partner? Are you feeding it your project proposal and asking it to ruthlessly poke holes in your logic?
Are you commanding it to challenge your underlying assumptions so that your brain is forced to burn the calories necessary to stay in that highly creative, evaluative state?
Because if AI truly is the modern printing press, you are faced with a choice every time you open a prompt window.
Are you just sitting there staring at the ink, or are you actually evolving to read the new reality?